Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Missing Link in Your Healing. So, today we were going to bring you a demonstration of a holistic health assessment, and I was going to do it on Antoinette because she had an issue that we could deal with. And yesterday we were going to record, and then what happened was Antoinette had had an episode the night before. And I just had a sense that what we really needed to do was do this process on her. And I said to her, well, I think maybe we should do this rather than record the podcast. And so we did the process. And so today we're going to talk about what happened, what it meant, how she experienced it, so that you can appreciate that this that we did yesterday was the missing link for her right now in her healing, which is really what this podcast is all about. Okay, so we are going to have a conversation, and so I'm going to just start off by just sort of painting the picture. So we were going to do the holistic health assessment because Antoinette's been having these anaphylactic type reactions. So she's had some skin reactions, and she's had her throat closing, and she wasn't sure exactly what it was. And of course, she's you guys all know Antoinette does the work, right? She's been doing a lot of the work. And one of the things that she did recently was she went to see a kinesiologist, and the kinesiologist identified that there was a lot of terror going on and identified that she had an intolerance to sulfites and that the sulfites in the food were triggering these reactions. Okay, so that's sort of the baseline of where we were. So Antoinette, I'm going to hand over to you so that you can tell us what happened on Sunday night.
Well, I probably have to start and try and be brief. Actually, a few days before Sunday night. So I decided to go on a no sulfur diet because that's the most logical step to do. We need to do all the other stuff, but if we have a physical reaction to something that can actually go anaphylactic, then we need to stop putting that in our mouths until we sort out the other stuff. So I went on a no sulfur diet, which means quite a limited eating because you'd be surprised how many healthy foods have sulfites in. But anyway, and I did really well and I was feeling great, not just physically, but also spiritually and mentally. I was feeling grounded, present, not the anxiety wasn't there that I've been having recently. And then so interesting what happened over the weekend. I decided, and a lot of this was unconscious in hindsight, Loretta and I uncovered it yesterday. I decided it was the weekend on Saturday, and I used to always do 80-20, 80% very clean, and on the weekends I could do what I liked. So some part of me very sneakily came along and said, you're feeling great. So it's Saturday today and tomorrow Sunday. So you can have 2 coffees each day and you can reintroduce a few of the things you haven't had. You're just muscle tested. Anyway, long story short, and coffee's quite a trigger for sulfites. But I was fine on Saturday. And then on Saturday night, my ego did the sneaky little thing. It said, I'm sure we can have a gin and tonic, And gin and tonic per se is not a big trigger for sulfur, but I had decided I was going to do like a whole week of clean. And the next thing I'm having 2 gin and tonics and a bit of cheese and biscuits. Dairy is very high in sulfur. And it was all fine. I went to bed. I didn't sleep well, probably because of the alcohol. And then the next day I was fine though, but I went to breakfast and I had eggs, which are very high in sulfur, and I had cheese and other things that are high in sulfur. And I still thought it would be fine. I was fine at the time. And then later on in the day, I also put a few things in my mouth that really, if I was all in on this not sulfur thing, I would not have put in my mouth. I don't think it really matters what they are. So I go to bed on Sunday night, and these reactions of mine, I have some kind of allergy, I think it is. I don't know. Loretta will speak to it. And I've had it for years, actually. And it's on and off. And I've been trying to get to the bottom of it for a couple of years. And at least I found out now what the trigger is sulfur. And I know what the core unconscious issue is. But it takes about 5 hours usually for the reaction. So I'm lying in bed at night, and the next thing let's just say all hell breaks loose, because when it goes anaphylactic, it recently has been like gagging me, choking me, because your throat swells. It causes swelling of all your organs when you have this histamine, too much histamine. And anyway, so it started choking me on Sunday night. It was the second time in 3 weeks I'd had this, like, I can't breathe. So already by the time I went to bed, I had the snot ball in my throat. It has many different symptoms that play out the sulfur reaction. And most of the time it doesn't go that bad, but it did go. So I had to take antihistamine, an allopathic one, and I really don't like doing that because I know that the next day I can't really function very well. Anyway, I took the antihistamine, and the next day was yesterday, and I got through the night, and I'm still alive, but we decided to record yesterday. So I guess you can pick it up again from there, maybe, Loretta.
Okay, cool.
I hope that wasn't too long-winded.
No, not at all, not at all. So just on a sort of a fundamental level, just a little bit of background. So obviously, allergic reactions come from your immune system. Your immune system overreacts to something that is generally innocuous. So you want to ask yourself, why would your immune system, which is effectively your army, you're the commander in chief, right? And it's your army. Why is your army hyper paranoid, super triggered, hypersensitive, and basically treating something that's safe as an enemy, overreacting? So it's a hypersensitivity reaction. So the question you want to ask yourself is, one of the questions you want to ask yourself is, what are you hypersensitive to? Now, obviously, Antoinette's currently hypersensitive to sulfur. But you know what? It's what are you hypersensitive to that you perceive as a threat when there actually isn't a threat? Now, when we've got fear, which we all have, right? But essentially when those are unconscious, that's why these unconscious stresses are so important. When we've got unconscious fears playing out and we are seeing situations in our lives as the enemy, we project that onto the food and our physical bodies show that to us. In fact, as I'm saying this, I remember something that John DeMartini taught. He said, now, I mean, I don't know if this is true, but it does make sense. He said that food intolerances happen when you happen to be triggered in whatever it is that creates enormous stress for you while you're consuming the food. So just as an example, imagine the baby is sitting in the high chair, okay? And it's eating its porridge, or the mom's feeding it its porridge. And the mom and the dad are having a fight. If the baby's safety feels threatened, or depending on how the baby interprets this lack of safety in the fighting between the mom and the dad, it can start having an immune reaction to whatever was in its environment at the time, which is the food, because it doesn't have that response to the mother and father. Because if it has that response to the mother and father, then there's the risk that they reject it, right? And then it does. But it has it to the food. Now, I don't know how true that is, because, I mean, I haven't actually sat and thought, okay, well, when was I actually eating the gluten? When something, okay. But the truth is that we have a hypersensitivity mentally, emotionally, or spiritually towards something usually unconscious that we don't know about. Okay, so Antoinette's going to talk to that now. And then what happens is we project that onto something that's innocuous, which is why allergies are so often multifaceted. And sometimes you can't find only one allergen. And also you find an allergen that's almost impossible to avoid. So this is why it's so important that, yes, we remove the allergen as much as we can, but it's important that we discover what is the hypersensitivity to. Antoinette, you had your hand up. Go.
Yeah, I think I need to say this now rather than later, because my experience directly talks to this. So when I was at the kinesiologist, the first place she went to was what emotions or unconscious stuff are at play here. And terror came up, actually. I think Loretta mentioned that. And then she identified that it's sulfur that is the actual physical trigger. So on the weekend, I don't think even the food I put in my mouth per se was the issue. But what happened on Saturday is I met somebody. unexpectedly, my intuition told me to go somewhere, and we had an exceptionally deep connection, and he happened to be male. Which doesn't really matter, except because of my history and the core unconscious issue. We had this really deep connection. It was amazing for hours, strangers. And I came home and I was like, wow, that's how this quantum stuff works. It's like you can just manifest someone as long as you're following your intuition. And I wasn't even going to romance or anything. It was just like I felt so safe with this person, so connected, so that I could be myself. And that's why I think I just had this insight why my ego got terrified, because my terror, Loretta and I are going to talk about the process she did. She took me back to this life and it ended up going to another life. Where did this terror originate from and how do we heal it energetically? So my terror is related to abandonment by people who should love me. So we're going to go to that just now when we talk about what happened. And it's exceptionally unconscious. So no amount of logic that you apply when you know this will say, oh, but it's just not true. It's not like that anymore. It just doesn't work that way until the unconscious stuff comes and whacks you and you really work with it and heal it in whatever way you need to. So I think I did the alcohol and a bit of wrong food because it was my ego going, this is terrifying. You've met someone you deeply connect to, and love and people you deeply connect to, it just ends up being an absolute disaster. So this is all unconscious, say. The next thing, I'm having an allergy. So Loretta will tell you now what ended up unfolding yesterday. It's just astounding, all of this, how multifaceted it is and how big the energetic stuff is.
Absolutely. So I just want to add, so Antoinette and I have been talking about her allergies, not as like her coach, but just like as colleagues. We've been talking about her allergies for, I don't know, months. And every now and again, like something new comes up. So, one of the things with allergies is that they are often related to boundaries. So, when they come up on your skin is your external boundary with the world, and your gut, your digestive tract, is your internal boundary with the world. And so when your boundary is being overrun by that food that you're allergic to, then your soldiers, your army, has to attack. When you feel unsafe, it's because something or someone is potentially encroaching on your boundary. So you know what? If you're alone at home and it's the middle of the night and you hear a strange noise, and let's just say that you have a gun and you have a panic button and you have an alarm system. Well, if it were me, I'd pick up the gun, I'd push the panic button and pick up the gun and lock myself in the room and hope I didn't have to use the gun, but I'd be on high alert, right? Until the security guys arrived and everyone checked and they said, oh no, don't worry, there hasn't been an intruder, right? So as soon as our boundaries are overrun, our immune system becomes hyperreactive. Because we become hyperreactive. Now, if it's an unconscious overrunning of our boundaries, we don't know that, but our immune system is giving us the message. So when you make a commitment to yourself that you can't keep, you're basically saying to your army, these are the rules, babe. We fire when this happens and we do this. Okay, and me as the commander in chief, I'm telling us, this is what we're doing. This is the plan. So when the commander-in-chief changes the plan every 5 minutes, what do you think happens to the army? The army's like, what? Where are we going now? Eventually people are shooting each other, right? Because they don't know who the enemy is any longer, right? So when we are not clear about our own boundaries with ourselves, and when we're not clear about our boundaries with others, but you know what? In my experience, it always starts with yourself. Because remember, the external world is a reflection of your internal world. So when you say yes to shit you don't want to do, when you say yes because you want to please other people, when you continuously put the needs of everyone else above yours and you deny your own needs, you're not even admitting to what your needs are. That's like zero boundary, all right? So many of us have this people-pleasing behavior, the wanting to fit in, the not wanting to be ostracized socially, we talk about, they twisted my rubber arm. I'll be quite honest with you. I'm not a particularly social person. And so, but even me, I can get my rubber arm twisted. Not so much anymore. I just say no now. And part of the reason why I can do that is because in social situations, I've almost always felt like the outlier. I became a teetotaler when I was 20, because when I was 19 and I went to university, I really tried very hard to drink with the rest of them. But I would take 3 days to recover from the hangover. It just wasn't worth it for me. So I just became the designated driver. I could still go to all the parties, and I made sure that everyone else I'm a Virgo. I made sure everyone else got home in one piece. None of my friends died because they weren't driving with anyone who was drunk, right? So in the beginning, when I was young, it was awkward. I'd been in a social situation where people go, well, don't you want to drink? And I'd go, no, thanks, I'll have a mineral water. And they go, oh my God, don't you drink? And I'd go, no, I don't drink. So you know what? I'm 54 now. I've had 34 years of practicing saying, I don't drink. And actually, I don't care anymore, right? But it took a while. So when we say yes to things that we instinctively, we have like a knowing that this is not okay for us, but we do it anyway. How many times have we got into those situations? I've got myself into that kind of fix a lot of times, right? Sometimes it looks like undercharging in a business. It sometimes looks like doing things for free when you really don't want to. It can look like doing things for free when you don't have enough money to pay your own bills. That's like a no boundary thing. Okay, so it looks different for different people. So Antoinette and I had been discussing all these things, and she'd been applying all of this, right? So I just want to make it really clear that this wasn't just like the first rodeo, right? And so what I'm going to describe to you, what happened and what I decided to do and why I did what I did, was because it wasn't the first rodeo, and because the way had been paved for this to happen. Now, having said that, sorry, Antoinette, I'm going to come to you, right? I'm going to let you talk right now. I just don't want to forget what I'm going to say. I have done this process on session 1 with clients, but only because they were in such a space that I knew that if I didn't do that, we wouldn't actually get to like session 2 or 3, because there was so much resistance or so much fear that they couldn't move beyond it, right? And so normally when I work with clients, we lead up to this point. Antoinette, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify before we move on the boundary issue. So in my particular situation, yes, all the people pleasing and all that stuff definitely fitting in rather than having authentic, deep connections. That's definitely been stuff. And I've been working on it for 7 years. But this particular boundary issue was a boundary that I don't go all in. Like I say, I'm not going to touch alcohol for a month, or I'm not going to eat sulfur this week. And the next thing, I find myself doing it. So the reason I wanted to put that in here is because what happened next, I haven't spoken about my in utero experience with my mother, but I might after Loretta's finished, because it underpins the sneaky self-sabotage and how I find myself setting boundaries for myself and not sticking to them. It's not because I'm not doing the work. I do the work every day of my life. It's not because I'm not deep into this journey. It's not because I'm not a highly conscious person who has nothing to offer anyone else.
Or disciplined, or because you don't, or lack of discipline. No willpower. No.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It's so insidious sometimes, this unconscious stuff. And the body, with some of us, maybe all of us, has to really make us so uncomfortable that we dig very, very deep, especially people like me, because I've been doing this work for 7 years. So my body had to get me to the point of like, we're back at death's door here, Antoinette. What is going on here? You need to get to the bottom of it. So my intuition fired to say I needed to have an energy clearing with a woman in KwaZulu-Natal. That cleared off a whole lot of energy off me, which was had broken my energy field, and some of it was very dark. So that really helped, because I was becoming less anxious and less embroiled in all this kind of awfulness that was definitely affecting my body, mind, and soul. But then I went to the kinesiologist, because she's far away from where I lived. So I was visiting there. I went to see her. She got to the bottom of the emotional thing, the the past thing, I knew what the trigger was, but Loretta healed it yesterday, I think. So that's the interesting part. And then I go and have another reaction, which went anaphylactic. And Loretta, instead of recording yesterday, said, let's do this process. And this process has been absolutely huge. Time will tell and we'll report back. But my boundary thing is with myself. And the reason I don't hold these boundaries with myself is when the wounding from the past, which is so unconscious, comes and says to me, not in my head, but unconsciously, well, you're just not actually worthy of being 100% healthy and spiritual and all this stuff. So because I'm so self-aware now, it never comes in the form of drinking a bottle of wine or obvious sabotage I used to do. It sneaks up and it looks like it's not a problem and it gets triggered. So it got triggered by me meeting this human I deeply connected with, and that's where my terror lies. So maybe that's a good lead in, Loretta, to say what happened yesterday.
Perfect. Thank you. Just one, before I go there, I just want to say that this is, you might think, oh my God, so now you do all this work and then, you still get sick. Yes, we all still get sick. I just want to tell you, your body is feeding back to you what's going on in your unconscious. And unless you were a fully enlightened being, well, if you were a fully enlightened being, you wouldn't have a body. But let's assume you got to just before full enlightenment, your body would still be giving you feedback. So it's not that your body stops giving you feedback. It's that you become more aware that when your body's having a reaction, it's trying to tell you something. And sometimes you get the answer really quickly, and sometimes it takes a little while. All right. And so you have to remove your idea of what the timeline needs to be, right? Because as soon as we get trapped in the how and the how long, the how and the when, that's when we are stuck in our egoic reality of needing to fix things. Okay. So yesterday we get online and I ask Antoinette how she is. I think to myself, oh, sorry, I'm having a hot flush now, so I'm glowing a bit. I noticed that she's not really her normal self, and she tells me the story. Oh, sorry for you on YouTube. I have to just fan myself, okay? So the joys of perimenopause, listeners. So I say to her, what happened? She tells me the story. And so I said, you know what? I think we need to do this process. So this is how we started. This process is called an energy retrieval. In some traditions, they call it a soul retrieval. I'm not sure if we're retrieving the soul, right? I'm sure we are definitely retrieving energy. So when we have a trauma, when we have a traumatic event that really impacts us mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, we leave a portion of our energy in the event. So we can do the talk therapy, we can do the work, but if we don't retrieve the energy, that's energy that we don't have to actually do the healing in the now. That's how I believe this works, okay? Even as I'm saying this, I'm like, oh my God, if you've told me 5 years ago I'd be having this conversation, I'd be like, what? Energy in the trauma, you've got to, no, hard no, okay? But I've seen this work so many times, I'm 100% convinced that this is true. Certainly it's true for me. So in the shamanic tradition, what would happen is the shaman would connect to where it is that your energy or your soul needed to be retrieved. The shaman would go on a journey, a spiritual journey, fetch those parts and reconnect them to you. Now, I am no shaman. I don't know how to do that. But I do know that I can help you go to where you need to go and you can do the healing yourself. Because I believe the power lies in you taking responsibility for healing that aspect of you that was in the trauma and bringing your energy back. And so I learned this beautiful energy retrieval process from an amazing energy healer called Mark Bound. I did not make this up. I learned how to do this, right? And I started doing it with my clients. And I have to tell you, I saw amazing results. Like things went so much quicker. So one of the ways that you get into this, one of the ways that you can, the doorway is you can either go in through someone's physical pain. You can use physical pain as the measure to get in, or you can use the emotion. So I said to Antoinette, what is the feeling? When you have that, when that was going on, how did you feel? And so the baseline emotion was this overwhelming terror. So what I did was I said to Antoinette, okay, I want you to remember the feeling, and then I want you to locate it in your body, which she did. And I'd like you to describe like where it is. So she told me where it was. I said to her, what does it feel like? She described the sensation that she can feel in her body. And what does it look like? And she was like, okay, so this sometimes takes a little time, right? But it's just like, use your imagination, right? And so she could describe it. So I said, okay, I want you to just connect to that so that you can actually really feel that. Okay, so now we forget about that. And now we do the retrieval. So basically to do the retrieval, it's really simple. You get the person into an alpha state. What I do is I always make sure that we connect to the heart center, which is the energy field that is in the center of your chest. It's not your heart chakra. It's the biggest toroidal field in your energy system. Your heart is the most electromagnetically active organ in your body, bigger than your brain, more than your brain. So we connect to the heart field. We ground ourselves to the earth. We attune and align ourselves to the divine or the light or whatever it is that you choose to believe that is, because honestly, without that, I don't think the healing can happen. And when that person is attuned and aligned and, we've done the process, then I take them on a little journey and we go for a little walk in the woods. It's quite significant that it was a wood, right? Because the wood is supposed to relax you and really get you into the spirit of it. Well, the wood already took Antoinette back to where she needed to go. And then eventually we get to a mountain, and it doesn't matter which visualization you use, but you basically rise up out of your reality, and then you visualize a timeline of your life. Now, remember, we've connected to our hearts, we've aligned with our higher selves, and we've attuned ourselves to the divine. So by the time we're at the top of the mountain, we're not mired in our current reality. And then literally, you ask your higher self to take you to the event that most needs healing today. Now, the most needs healing today will automatically be connected to the emotion that we identified right at the beginning. In other words, you're really saying to your higher self, this terror, I need to heal and retrieve my energy from the previous trauma when I experienced a similar terror. Because the terror that I'm experiencing today is because of my today anaphylactic reaction. But the roots of that, the unconscious roots of that, may not be in today. Okay? So Antoinette went along her timeline, and now I'm going to let her tell you how she experienced it. But just before she does that, I just want to say, I've done this with people who have never done any energy work. Never. I have one client. She's absolutely adorable. She's what I would call a straight. She'd never been to a therapist. She'd never done any energy healing. She didn't even know what a homeopath was. She didn't know what a chakra was. She thought a chakra was a condiment that you put on like a hot dog or something. Okay. She had no idea. And I did this with her on session. I can't remember what. And we had a result. Okay. I've had one person. No, I've got one person who's gone. And interestingly enough, in the event, that aspect of themselves, that memory, the person that was in the memory said, you never listen. So I don't want the healing and I'm not coming back.
Wow.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting, right? Okay. But anyway, a couple months later, we went back and we finished the job. So this might sound out there, guys, but I'm just going to explain it to you. So basically, you go to the event. I tell the client to hover above the timeline. When they're there, I tell them to lower themselves into the event as an observer. In other words, like you're watching a movie. So you drop into the scene, you see what's playing out in front of you, and you identify who in that movie scene is you, because there's always you. You're always there, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't go there. And then we ask that aspect of you, very basically, are you ready to receive some healing? We channel that divine healing light to the person until the client believes the healing is done. So I don't do the healing. I hold the space for the client. The client is the one that does the healing on themselves. And then the client asks that aspect of themselves if they're ready to come back. And basically they hug and they visualize themselves merging with this aspect of themselves. And then we come back home. Sometimes we go to another event, right? And that's what happened to Antoinette. So that's the process. And so the reason why I want to be so clear about this is because I want you to appreciate that all the person who's taking you on the process is doing is holding the certainty that you can do there, you can go there, that the healing that is required will happen, and to guide you sometimes with some questions when you get stuck. So sometimes the person who's doing the treatment, me, who's holding the energy, I just give a few little prompts so that we can move the process along if I feel like we're getting stuck in the process. it's really important that you appreciate that you are the one, you are your healer. The healer is you. That's what my program is called, okay? And the person who is helping you is facilitating you to do that healing. Okay, I'm going to stop banging on now. Antoinette, you're going to tell us where you went, if you want to, and what you experienced and what happened afterwards for you.
Okay. Well, Loretta and I, we're never going to talk about things like this on this podcast. But the universe had something else in mind. So it has to be spoken because it happened and the result has been astoundingly positive. So the first event I dropped into was actually from a previous life. And I have to contextualize this by saying I've been a person as spiritual as I've been that still on some level has doubt about past lives, but actually it's just becoming, I can't doubt it anymore. This kind of things happen to me too often. So I found myself in a wood. And actually, I had been regressed to this past life before, but I've been regressed to many past lives. But this particular life, it was absolutely obvious it was that life. I was a young woman and I was running through this wood, absolutely flipping terrified, beyond comprehension terrified. And what had actually happened is that my husband and I and our children had been hiding in a barn somewhere on a farm or in nature. And there was some kind of war or I don't know, something going on. And my husband and children betrayed me. He probably did it to save himself, but they betrayed me to save themselves and gave me over to the enemy. It must have been way, way back because these people had like silver helmets on and all that stuff. And I got chased through this forest and then horribly I died, but it wasn't very pleasant. I don't know exactly how I died. So that was the first memory. And then we worked with retrieving that and bringing it back, which happened quite easily, I think. But then Loretta asked me to go back in the timeline and was there any other point at which we needed to stop? And what happened next wasn't surprising, but if you look at this whole picture together, it's astounding, actually. I don't know if I've spoken about this before, but in utero, my mother tried to abort me with a knitting needle. And of course, there's no blame on her or judgment. She was very young and unmarried and, so it's not about being upset about that. I've worked on healing this and working with it on multiple levels, including energetic, for 7 years. But it's a very deep abandonment wound, which Gabor Mate and people like that will say affects every single part of your life, actually, and unconsciously has a very huge impact. So it's been quite a long healing process for me, and it's got to yet another point of going back there. So I went back there and I didn't re-experience the feeling of being in my mother's room when that happened, but I'd already experienced that in a psilocybin journey and through some brain harmonics. And I wasn't under any psychedelic, but both times I had experienced the absolute terror and not being able to breathe, suffocating in my mother's room when she did this. So I thought those two things had helped me process this enough and heal it. But this terror obviously was still sitting there in my unconscious. And fascinating when you see all of this together, the previous life was being abandoned by people that really loved me or should have loved me. And then the mother thing, no matter how innocent she was in doing it, we've all done those kind of things. It created a well, if my own mother doesn't want me, and so dramatically and severely tries to kill me. And I couldn't get out of the room, of course, because it's an enclosed space. So that suffocation and absolute extreme terror and anxiety over my own mother trying to kill me, and I couldn't do anything. So it actually took me back to that event. So Loretta, maybe you can pick it up from there. And then to bring the energy back wasn't as simple as in the first one, but it did happen.
And so, I mean, we don't have to go into the particulars of this, but essentially, you know, that aspect of Antoinette wasn't ready. She wasn't that keen on the healing, and she definitely wasn't ready to come back. And so we just asked her, well, why? Like, what is it? And she said something to Antoinette. And so then the thing was, well, you know, Antoinette, what can you do? What could you say to her right now? Because the truth is, Antoinette survived it, right? And this is this aspect of her that thought that they were going to die. So, like, what could you say to her? Like, is there anything you'd like to say to her that, not to change her mind, but that just could give her perspective on why it is that maybe she can trust you this time? And
she said she wouldn't feel safe. Sorry, that's why she didn't come back, because she doesn't trust that, because she's come back before. This happened to me 7 years ago, and I didn't. She was so terrified to come back then. This fetus is a very terrified thing. And I brought it back before, not in the same way, but, and then what she said yesterday was, I didn't do a great job of sticking to my commitment to make her feel safe. And that's not my fault either. I didn't, I suppose, knowing what she needed to be safe, I did my best, but it had scared her off again. So Loretta asked her, what can you do for her? Hey, is that what you said? To help her feel safe enough to come back?
Yeah.
Can't remember what she said, but I remember my commitment to her was, I will try my best, because I also didn't want to say definitely, because I'd failed at it before. So, and she must have come back, because the bottom line here is the fascinating also web here of how meeting this person on Saturday that I felt so safe with and connected to, even though it was a stranger, somehow triggered the self-sabotage and the unconscious reaction. Well, you know that what's meant to be safe is never safe, Antoinette. So, and then my mind starts creating all kinds of drama around, I don't know, this person and any potential, and usually sabotages that as well. And then I have the reaction, and then Loretta does what she does yesterday. So it's all freaking magnificent. And my story just speaks to the fact that this is a journey and it's a spiral, as Loretta says. And just because you've healed your cancer doesn't mean there isn't going to be other stuff, because it's actually a lifetime's journey, this.
100%.
And being unwell also doesn't mean we've necessarily failed, as long as we have enough self-awareness, we're grounded enough, and our intuition is firing enough for us to be able to take the opportunity like I got yesterday, or know what to do next. So maybe I don't know if you want to finish off before I say how.
Sure. Absolutely. So we had a conversation. Antoinette had a conversation with that aspect of herself. Now you might go, oh, this sounds like a basket case, because Antoinette, that was her, but there was an aspect of her that she hasn't integrated fully into herself. So this is not going to fetch parts of you that you don't know about. Well, maybe that is, but it's about integrating all of you. And the more you can integrate all of you, the frightened, the wonderful, the independent, the needy, the clingy, the sabotager, the successful one, the more whole you become. And the more whole you become, the more you heal. It's the key to healing. So that's the power in this process. So, okay. So by the time we got to the end of that one, we asked her higher self if there was anywhere else she needed to go. It was like absolutely hard no on that, right? It was enough for one day. So we came back, and it was very gentle, came back off the mountain, and it's just really get you back into the alpha state, and then, you know, more and more integrated into your physical body, grounding, keeping you safe, make sure that you feel energetically protected, drawing all your energy back, putting your energetic boundaries in place. It's really important to do that, because when you're out there, babes, you're out there, okay? It's important that you come right back here and that you keep this safe, all right? And then when it was done, so here's the thing. I've done this before. I've been in the process. Someone's taken me into the process, and it's so real when you're in there. And the minute they say, open your eyes and come back in the room, I'm like, oh, that was the biggest lot of horseshit. I mean, honestly, I just made all that stuff up. Was that shit even real? Okay. normal, because that's what your ego does. So the key is to go back to, can you connect to the terror? Where is it? What does it look like? And what does it feel like? So I asked her that question. She scanned her body. She said it's not there now. Now, not every client comes back and says it's completely gone. Sometimes they go, it's less. So I very often ask them in the beginning, like on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being unbearable, where is this? They'll say 8. So when we come back, I'll go, well, on a scale of 0 to 10, where is it? And they say, well, it's a 2. Okay, great. It means there's been an improvement, right? If nothing else, your physiology has responded to the process. And to me, that's the indicator whether whatever the healing is that needed to happen today has happened. Now, you might go, oh, all these generalizations, we're not really sure. Yes, you're right. We're not really sure, because this is not a linear science. This is a circular process. If there's anything I've heard or learned, there isn't one size fits all, and everything doesn't work the same for everyone. And it's not linear. You can't say, because I did A, B, and C, I'm going to get X, Y, and Z. And that's part of that's actually what makes this journey difficult for me. I'm a control freak. God, I just want a plan. I want like a schedule. I want a strategy and a timeline and a schedule. And unfortunately, my dearly beloved friends, it's not how it works. It doesn't work like that. So what I've learned is I've just learned to trust the process and then see what happens with the client. So I'm lucky enough. I mean, I know Antoinette and I see her every week. But with my clients, it's the same. I see them regularly and I can say, how did you feel after? How did you feel the next day? And we can see in their behavior whether their behavioral patterns are changing and whether their physical symptoms go away. And you know what? Very often they do. So, Antoinette, you can finish up with how you felt after and how you feel today, and we'll keep you posted on how it goes over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because I've done so much work or what, but I came back feeling completely different. And I was skeptical. For all my quantum experiences in life and spiritual experiences and healers, I mean, of all people, I shouldn't be skeptical, but there's still a part of me that goes, really? You're just making this up. I said to Loretta afterwards, I'm sure I just made this up. I've had past life retrievals. I know about my mother thing. It's like, I just made that up. And she's like, made a very valid point, but why that past life? Why that life experience? It could have been 2,000 things. So, but the proof of the pudding is in the end result. So my skepticism had to be battered away by the change in how I felt. Okay, I felt free. I felt like kind of excited, this liberation, this it's very hard to define the difference between how I felt before or after. And most of all, I felt that now I would have the capacity, we'll see, time will tell, I'll be honest with you. I feel like I have the capacity now to be all in. I am not going to, hopefully my ego is going to go, my ego tried this morning, sure, it tried to sabotage with this like doubt. And then I just used Loretta's set A and set B. I caught it fast, did the set A, B and set A and B fast. So the difference is the before and after is that we need to be energetically very grounded and strong enough and centered enough to be able to, I was going to say counteract the ego. It's not the right point to say, because it's not like the ego is the enemy, but the ego will constantly, the more we become healthier, especially, the more we become in alignment with our real selves, the more the ego is going to try and hissy fit because it's terrified of change. So, but when you had a process like I had with Loretta, it's easier to counterbalance that, let's say, when it does come up. It may never stop coming up in my whole life, but I could very easily use a short process and switch it. I feel very determined that I can stick to an eating protocol no matter how freaky my friends think I am. It's this fitting in thing. It's like, oh, come on. You're always on these diets and fasts and you can't eat this. And I'm like, Yeah, I'm a freak, actually. But actually, I came back from that process yesterday thinking I know absolutely what I need to do. Not in a control freak way like I used to do, but for self-nurturing and self-love, I need to stay off sulfur till the end of this week, full stop. So whatever comes, I just have to say no to. So that was a very, very big leap from where we started, Loretta. So I myself was surprised.
If it makes you feel any better, 9 times out of 10, when I'm finished doing the process, I'm like, oh, I wonder if that was even real. And you know what the best thing is? I've realized I don't have to believe it in order for it to work. I just have to make sure that I'm aligned with my truth and that I am focused on the service to the other person and to myself in the process. And trust. I'm literally going to say trust that the hand of the divine will guide it.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to relinquish the control. And that's my big lesson in life, which is probably 100% why I have to do this work, this kind of work. And so, every time I do a session like this for someone, usually we go back to doing something a little bit more practical for a session or two so that my ego can calm down and they can ground. And then we go back into the weird. All right. And I do believe that maybe the more of this I do, the less I'll doubt it. But I'm okay. I'm okay with my ego going, not so sure, not so sure about that, Loretta. And then I go, you know what? This is true, but I've got evidence of this person and 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 this person. And the more I do it, the more evidence I accumulate that it has whatever effect it needs to have in the moment for the person.
And that requires a trust that a lot of us don't have. Even we say we're spiritual and we're into the divine and the quantum energies power. But particularly if you've had a trust trauma like me in the past or abandonment, or even if you haven't, like Loretta hasn't, it's really hard for us human beings to really, really, really trust that and that we can be the conduit for it. So I just
100%.
keep on getting the evidence over and over again, including yesterday. So, and I think there's so many things this episode speaks to. It speaks to the episode we did last time on boundaries and autonomy and health. So go back and listen to that. It speaks to intuition having to be a critical part of your journey. And we did 2 episodes on that before this last one. I think it was episode 24 and 25. And it also speaks to just take the next step. And mostly it speaks to extreme self-awareness is important, but with compassion,
100%.
because we are going to mess up. If you go on a journey to heal yourself on this level, you are going to mess up in your mind, because it's only after we do something again and again normally, and we reflect back and we said, I repeated that pattern. I did that thing again. Why am I still doing this? And then the challenge for me is not to become self-berating and self-whipping.
Absolutely.
But to hold the compassion to go, well, at least I've seen that. So, yeah.
100%.
So thank you. Loretta also pointed out to me a while ago how I whipped myself so badly. So it's to not fix ourselves when we see this wrong in us, and it's to not whip ourselves. And so easy, like in my life and many of our lives, to go, well, I've caused these reactions again. When am I going to get the plot?
Yeah. What's wrong with me? So and that is a product of your ego taking you right back to whatever your fundamental limiting belief is of, I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy, I can't, it doesn't matter how much work I do, I'm not worthy of getting this right because I can't, I'm stupid, I don't belong, blah, blah. We all go there, every single one of us. The difference, it's like we'll all get sick at some point, whether it's flu or tonsillitis or migraine or whatever, okay, or cancer, whatever. But it's about what is your bounce back like? That's, so I was saying to Antoinette, I've had this in my business. I've repeated the same pattern. I repeated it in my practice 2 or 3 times. I've repeated it in my online business once again. So I don't know, I've probably done this 3 or 4 times. The first time, it took me 30 years to see the pattern. This next time, it's taken me 3 years to see the pattern. I'm like, holy moly. I'm 1/10 as bad as I was before. So, the next time it'll probably only take me 3 months to see the pattern. And maybe I'll see the pattern in 3 hours. And so instead of having to go through 30 years before I can course correct, and you know what, the 3 years of the pattern, it wasn't the pattern all the time. It was just the end result was, oh my goodness, that was the pattern again. So what is the thing that keeps on recurring, that causes that pattern, that makes me believe that I'm not good enough, that if I don't control myself and everybody else and the whole world, then everything's going to fall to pieces, and that I have zero power, and that effectively I don't matter, because that's the pattern. That's what's sitting underneath the pattern. And so I know that that's there, but as Antoinette says, your ego's so sneaky. Sometimes you have to mess up so that you can see the pattern that is recurrent. And when you can see that it's recurrent, your ego can't lie to you anymore and say, don't worry, it's not up to you. You've had no responsibility in this. It's the economy, it's the country, it's corruption, it's corona, whatever, okay? Because you're like, you know what, actually, the country, the economy, corona, they were all different at all those times. The only common denominator, and in the 4 times that I've repeated this pattern, is me. So this is not, it's my fault. It's like, thank God I can see that it's me in this, and that now I can start asking the questions that will give me the answer so that I can grow in my self-awareness, and so that I can create differently, if that's what I'm after.
And progress is when we bounce back quicker, as you reflected to me yesterday. Progress, we all expect progress is when we're cured or it's done. But as you reflected to me, I said, how did I get into this again, me of all people? And you said, but Antoinette, can I just tell you, it took you 36 hours to go through this whole process. It would have taken me, it took me 56 years to even start on this journey 7 years ago. And now I'm like, Loretta's right. This was pretty hardcore, but in 36 hours, it all played out. I saw it. My intuition got what I needed, and grace, Loretta came along. And so, it's not linear. It's not always quick, but it's a step-by-step process, and we really know we're making huge progress when we see what's going on and we can come back from it and learn from it.
With kindness and compassion to ourselves.
Yes, very important.
Out beating ourselves up because of it. Yes. So, thank you, body, for showing it to me. Not like, why can't I control my body? No. You know what? Well, you can't control your body because your body is feeding back to you what you don't know about yourself. So you don't want to control it. You want to understand what it's trying to tell you. That's compassion. You don't need to like what it's doing. You don't have to go, oh, I'm so grateful I have chronic pain or anaphylactic reaction. No, you don't have to do that. But you know what? You can recognize that it's just a message.
Yeah, and sometimes the message has to be very loud, as I said at the beginning, because the body never lies, to quote Gabor Mate's book, and the body knows. So the body, if you don't listen to the body in the beginning, and unfortunately we're all bypassing all this. I mean, we're not saying this is the elixir to all healing, but it has to be part of the puzzle pieces of your healing. Otherwise, the body will keep us bringing us back to, well, there's something that still needs to be done. And it's so multifaceted. We don't know if that's energetic and it's a combination often. Like now I have to eat in a certain way, but the energy retrieval had to be done. So, and we get so impatient with our bodies. I don't know about you, Loretta. I've got better, but I used to be so irritated with my body when it wasn't strong. And I couldn't do all these because I was such a strong, high-achieving person. And now, the frustration with the body, you can have it, but you need to do set A, set B to go to, well, what is the vision for my health? And why is my body doing this? Maybe it is my time to die. But I don't want to die in terror. So let me try and see what it is that the body's telling me yet again. So thank you, Loretta.
my last thing that I want to say, because we have been going on for a while, is just as Antoinette said, this retrieval process is not necessarily the elixir to healing. Set A, set B might not be your king to healing. This is not about us trying to tell you that you've got to do it this way. I think the message that we're trying to bring across is, as Antoinette said, we need to have a vision. We need to learn how to connect to our spirits. Because if we don't connect to our spirits, we're going to keep on trying to set goals from our egos. We're going to keep on trying to fix things, and we're going to keep on getting stuck in the same patterns. And we don't need to, if we choose to, accept that we're not just a machine. Life is not mechanistic. There's more to it. We're not just machines. You can't just replace the part that's worn out. That's not how it works. And that the body is sending you a message. Now, if that doesn't resonate with you, it doesn't resonate with you. But from what I've seen, it's not so much about what tool you use. It's about where is your focus when you're using the tool? What's guiding you to do that? Okay. And so that's what's really important. So there isn't a one size fits all. And because there isn't a one size fits all, and because we're never really encouraged to truly connect to our intuition, and because we actually fed a lot of stuff about spirituality that actually I don't think is necessarily true or good for us, sometimes we need some guidance. And sometimes you just need a little bit of help. And you know what? Your intuition will guide you to the person that resonates with you.
And you need a toolbox, and often we need outside. We have to be our own healers, but we need an outside person to offer the right tools. So, Loretta, maybe we could end by saying set A, set B. We did in some episode, but I can't remember which. So maybe would you be willing to share it with people if they emailed you or me to ask for it?
Yeah.
Or
yes, I have my own little recordings that I did on my memo thing on my phone that you can just listen to on your computer or on your telephone. If you'd like a copy of those, please just email me and I will happily send that to you. The process is really easy and it guides you through it.
Yeah, and in our Fear Masterclass, which is only 450 Rand, you can buy it. We've got that and a lot of other very helpful tools, actually. So yeah, pop us a message, and thank you for listening. And please share this if you found value. And as Loretta always says, share it with a link to someone on their phone, so otherwise people never really get around to listening.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks, Loretta. And thank you for yesterday very much.
It was my pleasure.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye.